pretty well, so after, we'll take another kind of break after the next section, and she and I can converse a little bit about that. Okay, should we, no wait, looks.
You just got passed out.
So we don't get issues, that's something you guys want to talk about.
Sure. Thank you.
It's not enough.
Oh, don't do that.
Look out
Well,
for
I
Share
put it
conditions.
behind your
Yeah,
screen so you do not see it.
Okay, smart.
I also need to have, I'm going to reach out to the stuff in Blackwell on this
Yeah.
is septic, to interpret, I'm not sure quite what all those images and colors he shows, and why he's saying, well, we can do it to protect these 3 trees right there.
They can work around the trees.
Well, but I'm going, well, do we want to do that? Do we have to? I mean, we could transplant those 3 trees right over there, for example.
Yeah, I think
I-
from a design standpoint, if Steve is like, no, we can't, then yeah, we could say, we can't protect them, we can replant. Yeah. But then also, of course, we want to look further.
Well, that's,
Yeah, then.
Get started again. So the afternoon discussion topic is kind of bigger strategic priorities for 2026. We'll circle back to some of the discussion and action items or plan of action from yesterday as well as earlier this morning. But first up is a number of the key recommendations coming out of our comprehensive plan that was made by the Planning Commission and that the Council ultimately approved in adopting Kiawah Next. And the question is, are any of these 3 that I've specifically listed here, or maybe others, do we want to look at those as key strategic priorities for the coming year? And if so, how do we operationalize those?
What are the 3?
The 3 are,
Sorry, I don't know.
the Kiawah Island Alliance, a Greenbelt Conservation Fund Land Bank, and Community Infrastructure Assistance Program.
What was the last one?
Community Infrastructure Assistance Program. So we'll talk about that, Paul. That's the idea of and this is a follow-on to the beginning of the conversation yesterday, where some of this is, we talked about our balance sheet, the town's balance sheet, particularly reserves, and whether there are opportunities to utilize our reserves strategically to the broader benefit of the community. And these are some of those things that we might talk about. What is, enhanced Kiawah? We talked about the last thing. Anyway, whether
Those are all from Kiawah Next, so all of the priorities that were listed.
Were things that were specifically on Kiawah.
Okay, there's a lot, I'm not sure we're going to get through. Are we going to get through all of that? I guess
No.
we got to.
No.
Well,
So probably the biggest thing that had just been discussed by the part of the Planning Commission with a consultant from the very beginning of the process, I think when Luke, when you were involved, and I'm sure Madeline goes back to Planning Commission time, is the idea of this Kiawah Island Alliance. And it sounds good conceptually, kind of like the idea. The questions I've always had in my mind are exactly what is it? Who's on it? What its role and mandate? It can't be a decision-making body because the municipality can't delegate, its police powers, particularly to other entities. It can only probably be an advisory body. And then, what are the things that the Kiawah Island Alliance would focus on? Would it be simply a confab that get together or occasionally to talk about issues that may be of communal interest that are cross-cutting the different stakeholders? Or should there be a specific set of issues, projects, or initiatives that are identified that necessarily involve multiple entities? Not necessarily all 4 or 6 or however many you want to have part of this, but that would at least involve more than one. And we discussed it a little bit earlier, just Paul, but Sherry was here, the issues related to the main gate, and whether that involves physical configuration of that main intersection or not. That's ultimately going to involve multiple stakeholders. That could be one specific project, but let's back up a little bit. And I don't know what others have a thought on. I mean, it strikes me that this is another one that we can't solve today, like, okay, yes, we're creating the Kiawah Island Alliance, but we've got to have somebody look at it, okay, how do we think this is a good idea, and if so, how do we operationalize it? Because, one issue is just who's on it. The Ks are obvious, but does it include, for example, Edens? I would think Edens would be an important stakeholder because they're a key stakeholder in the town. Do you do subparts of that, Seafields or MUSC or not? Is Kiawah Island Utility part of the Kiawah Island Alliance? And is it other large property owners like the Sea Islands Conservance, the Conservancy of the Sea Islands, or Low Country Land Trust that all own significant amounts of property either in Kiawah Island or right around Kiawah Island? So one question is just, and I don't have people thoughts about how broad the group is.
So I think part of it goes down to what you said, the objectives and mandate. I know different ones of us on our committees have different kind of versions of that. I know in your public safety committee, you've got representation from the key organizations. I've done the same on infrastructure, public works. Kind of how I segregated who's on the committee, non-voting wise, versus other entities is who would we have a franchise agreement with? They're not necessarily on the committee, but other major island stakeholders would be. We've got the club on behalf of Kiawah Partners, we've got the golf resort, we've got TOKI, and they all show up and actively participate. And it supports a lot of purposes because we've got a lot of shared interests and stuff. Areas that, just in that kind of pillar, that I think about where we probably could come together more, and I don't even need to come together at a mayor, chairman of the board, president of the resort kind of level, but there's been email traffic about Berkeley bills, and Ed is on top of it from livability, but Brian and I are trying to figure it out too from our relationship with Berkeley. We probably need a tighter relationship amongst the three of us because we don't want to be like hitting Bert multiple times, but we also want to be uniformly representing the community. That's more pinpoint, but I think there's like the spirit and intent of KIA of trying to create a culture, but then I think that it goes down to defining those objectives you're talking about, of what they actually accomplish.
Yeah, I think you're exactly kind of on the right track. And as we were developing this and kind of, as I was thinking through, what is the vision for this? I think there's some, either you call them concentric circles or a hub and spoke type organization, where the hub is, maybe somehow the leadership of kind of 5 or 6 organizations. And you can think of the obvious ones, Kika, the resort, the partnership, the town, and a couple of others. But then as we talked about where it had application, let's say there was, a disaster on the island. So then you need the utilities to be involved, and as well as, transportation and all of these things. If you had some type of development coordination you wanted to do, that's a different group of folks that you need to pull. So I always thought of it as kind of, a hub and spoke, if you can follow that analogy. But it comes back to, what are you trying to accomplish? And one of the main things we talked about was just communications. Having, quite frankly, the stuff that goes out on IKEA or the town website, that was like kind of the genesis of the whole thing. So it's what is the vision for it, and from that you can define kind of who's the leadership and who are the subcommittees that you have attached to it.
So, and John, I don't know if you want to shine lights from the standpoint of thinking of planning commission of the members, but I mean, you could simply say the Kiawah Island Alliance is nothing more than you identify, whatever number of organizations, and we schedule a quarterly meeting, and we talk about, have an agenda for issues to discuss. Yep. And maybe there's some agreement on kind of an action plan to deal with something, and that's it. Or is it something even more formal and structured than that? It's this entity that meets, it's comprised of, the entity itself is the kind of the leadership, and then you set up a number of different kind of working groups that meet more frequently to tackle specific issues or not. By the way, we can't impose this on anybody. I mean, this is a recommendation coming out of the town's planning commission, part of our comprehensive plan, but we can't force Kika or anybody else to participate in this. And I suspect they might say, well, sounds great, but give me more details before I agree what it is that I would be signing up for, kind of thing. So that's what we're trying to kind of evaluate here.
Yeah, I would add, I think there's also a level of trying to keep it more of a high-level strategic focus, opposed to getting into the more operations of it, just because the nature of a lot of decisions and issues, concerns, what bogged down happens because of the silos of the different organizations. And so if the Kiawah Alliance being branded as, can we get the leadership to really hone in on a specific issue and share the direction that benefits the collective? And I think if that is something that, to your point, if it's a quarterly meeting, is that the forum, is that the venue for it, opposed to a one-day strategic planning meeting like this with just the leadership of those entities. That we don't know what that looks like, but I think that's some of the conversation of how can we more strategically align the interests, and so to support some of the things that we've already discussed that would benefit Kiawah as a whole. Like when we think about the interests of the resort, we talked about the workforce and that, and traffic, how that supports. It's just, I think, trying to create alignment between the leadership on some of these issues.
I think, I like how you said that, and it made me think, I don't think we want to duplicate what committees are already doing, because I think they're handling the more tactical stuff pretty well. I don't think that's a problem that's fixed. But, one thing that may rise to Kiawah Alliance is, even though we've jump-started the transit discussion, maybe that's something that the leadership level, mayor, chairman, president, talk about, okay, do you support this? That's probably a good question. Do we want to take the effort to go try to figure this out?
Would your employees or constituencies, the benefit from this? And
Yeah, it's one thing for us to agree to it, but then we need the other stakeholders to agree to it.
Yeah.
So, and this involves gate access issues, and Paul, this is from a discussion from yesterday that kind of spills over into this. We had a presentation from one of the leaders of CARTA, the Charleston Area Rapid Transit Association, and discussing the opportunities for getting public transit down to this end of the island, because we have more than 2,500, or at least more than 2,000 employees that are coming on to the island every day. We have a number of other service providers, etc. Plus people here that would be interested in going up to Maybank or to Charleston that don't want to drive necessarily. Is there a sufficient demand and support for getting public transit down to this end of the Sea Islands? And it's And where an issue that has arisen in the past that really involves a collective public-private partnership is, even if we can persuade CARTA or the COG to provide public transit down here, and there is sufficient demand, it's probably dropping off here or it's dropping off in Freshfields Village. Probably not going to be a lot of support on the part of Keek and others to have public buses going back on the island. So then, it doesn't solve for anything if you just drop here and you can't solve for the last mile, but is then working together, is there the support of the town, Kika, the club, and the resort to have a public-private partnership for a local, transportation service that would then transit people, or it comes out of the public service, onto the island and around. And that's a type of issue that would necessarily involve a lot of different stakeholders. Part of it is just assessing whether, in fact, we think anybody's employees would actually utilize it or not. And so that's one of the kind of the spillover kind of talks we discussed as a potential Kiawah Island Alliance type of issue.
And one of the things, I think it's a good example that's already stood up in terms of not Kiawah, the alliance itself, but one of the subgroups, is Mr. Berner's activity with CERT. He's pulled together a lot of those multiple constituencies already. It involves kind of health, safety, welfare. For an event, they're doing tabletop exercises together and things like that. So that's actually a pretty good model of the subcommittees that you might have associated with Kiawah.
So it made me think about, sorry.
Well, the challenge, again, trying to define what this thing is doing. We might learn if the leadership of 4 to 6 to 7 or 8 different organizations meet quarterly at an agenda discussing item, that in fact there's already a committee or committees that are handling those issues in an operational level. Cut across all of us is emergency preparedness issues, but that coordination is already occurring.
It is.
Is there something more that needs to be done? I don't know.
Yeah,
So
I was
trying to figure out, what does this thing contribute to or solve for? I'm, as I've told my counterparts at Kika many occasions, happy to have ongoing conversations about this, that, and other thing. I think having conversations is a good thing. I'm all in favor of at least having a quarterly get-together of everybody to have conversations about topical issues. But whether it's something more than that, I don't know.
Well, and
Yeah,
Luke said,
please.
So Brad, I was just thinking, because I know that we've had issues over time. I'm wondering whether, and this maybe is a derivative of the idea of an alliance or an alliance group, but would it be helpful that if there were a consolidated island calendar, just so that we're not getting in each other's way in terms of events, either large or small? And I'm thinking of, in the large category, obviously the marathon or tree trimming or whatever, and on the small end, maybe we don't want to have conflicting dates for critical committees or our world or whatever. And I think possibly, and maybe it's already happening and I'm just not aware of it, but a consolidated island calendar might be a helpful coordinating tool.
Well, I would characterize that good idea as blocking and tackling more than strategic island alliance. But good point. It's something that's, I've got our communications and public affairs department meeting. We've certainly discussed internally particularly because of some recent scheduling related issues, whether or not, and others have suggested the same thing. There needs to be, at the very least, better coordination in some way, or whether we all populate our own calendars or there is some understanding of everything that's going on around the island at any given point in time. Some conflicts is going to be inevitable, but there's sometimes it's just obvious to avoid. We could obviously have avoided some unnecessary conflicts in scheduling. I felt that last week, which was unfortunate with the town hall, which is overlapping with Our World and the Conservancy's event. Hadn't just been focused on that, and if we could have easily, it would have been easiest for us to adjust.
So Luke said communication and just opening up a better platform for communication. I think the culture is a thing, like I said also. Kind of, as you're describing that, made me think of, it's almost like a steering group. You're not necessarily solving the problems, but you're steering your respective organizations with agreement amongst the principals that these are activities we want to focus our teams on.
Or maybe just educating the principals
It
that
could
in
be.
fact, unbeknownst to you, this is all actually already going on.
It could be, yeah.
Yes, Ms. Gallagher.
Because I think that's really what this was born out of, is our community's impression that we don't speak to each other, that the town and Kika have no interaction, and we're operating on different planets. So if the key leadership was going to get together regularly, I know Kika has goals that we set for ourselves every year. And if we could share our goals with your goals and the resort's goals, that alone would go so far toward coordination of efforts.
So, I mean, it sounds like
We have
you're-
enough committees.
there's at least support for, some quarterly, I think, I won't speak for Kika, but Kika's here, they can speak for, individual members can speak for the board. At least, I don't know, quarterly get-together, public get-together in this type of setting that would involve leadership of the different key stakeholders on Kiawah Island. We could have an agenda about certain topical issues, and we could open it up to, other issues.
It can't help, it can only, it can't hurt, it can only help.
Yeah, and I think, probably, it's one of those things, schedule the first meeting,
Yeah.
figure it out as we drive. Probably the first topic is each principal saying what do they want to get out of it.
All right, I think we have a consensus.
So we'll take the lead in reaching out. The question is, does anybody have thoughts about who, really would be kind of the key members of the alliance? I have my own thoughts, but invite.
We covered some of them, Kika, Resort, Eden's. I have mixed feelings about developers, but the resort's a developer, so it depends on what lens you want to look at them through. The club is a
I think it's
major-
generally outlined in the
Yeah,
plan.
in the plan, it listed,
Well, yes, they did, but we don't have to,
right,
yeah.
so it started with the major players as stated, Kika, the resort, utilities, the partners, conservancy groups, Edens, and all of those were listed sort of or other liaisons as needed. So I think council should just determine what the sort of central framework or the key players, and then depending on if there needs to be, I think what you alluded to already is sort of a centric model. If there needs to be a specific issue that you bring in additional players, then I think you take that approach.
You could have obviously a kind of a second, a core, and then a second kind of tier of interest. The way I think about it is anybody who is a substantial property owner, substantial business, substantial employer, or manages or operates substantial infrastructure and or has a substantial kind of governance role. Those are all kind of ongoing.
I think so. Well, the question I've got, I don't know the answer, I'm just going to ask it. You don't want to get too big. You want to focus on aligning and coordinating Kiawah entities, but is there value in inviting EMS, St. John's Fire District, CCSO, players like that?
I don't think so, not, at least not initially.
Okay.
So they did just in
The
the,
club
Well,
has
the club would fair check all the boxes of what I described before.
so I dived a little bit into the sort of the text language that was written on it. And it did state, at a minimum, this encompasses the town of Kika as Kiwa's principal governance entities, as well as the major owners and developers, which would include the resort, Edens, and the partners. So that, I think, would be the starting point, if you will.
And I'm less frankly, I'm less interested in the developer aspect of it, is in part because I'll separate out, there's not, certainly Kiawah Partners don't have that much more development interest on Kiawah Island, but they still have a substantial island interest as a result of the Kiawah Island Club and nothing else, because it employs 700 or 800 people. And it's a substantial amount of property on Kiawah Island. It's a amount of infrastructure.
From my committee was, I look at the resort as an operation,
Yep.
not a developer.
Yep.
And I invited the club as opposed to the partners for the same reasons you described.
Yeah, although, I would kind of.
And I know the partners are
But
kind of-
partner, but that's fine, but you're not gonna have kind of separate, but that's, if they wanna fold those
I thought it
together.
was on the major employer, the major infrastructure operator.
That would include the club.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not gonna really care so much about the Kiawah, whether it's Kiawah Partners or Kiawah Island Club. It's Kiawah Partners largely because of the club. I mean, they're the owner. Now, on the other hand, we don't invite, Riverstone or the Goodwin family. It's just the resort, which is their operating entity, but.
I agree.
Kika, are you interested in participating in this?
From my perspective, I can't speak for the board, of course, but I would say, yes, I think there are enough issues of common interest to our respective constituencies that are overlapping, that some sort of a high-level coordination, so we don't get in each other's way, number one. Number two, that maybe there is collaboration that would be accretive. I think it's worth a try.
There's some things that could come out of it where some collaboration, we identify a need for collaboration that's not being solved or satisfied by an existing committee structure or working group structure. For example, these transportation issues we talked about, that's maybe need to set up something else, and the leadership of however many organizations say, gee, we'll each dedicate some staff to putting together a working group or something to focus on this one issue.
We are launching that, but I'm not sure if it's a place it permanently stays, so.
Okay.
Any other thoughts there? So we'll kind of maybe a way I'll think about it, we'll talk further. There'll be kind of this key stakeholder group, and then to the first one, we'll invite some other island stakeholders that may or may not be kind of regular participants in this, but initially.
Yeah, keep it high level first time. I would limit attendance to 2 people, otherwise, 2 people from each group.
Yes, yeah.
Not just
Little echo chamber here.
Draw straw. And the ancillary piece would be down the road, building in some kind of feedback mechanism to the community. I can see where there could be a lot of interest in taking state of the town or state of the resort and expanding it to state of this alliance. And what we've identified as core issues for the community.
Well, this would certainly be a public meeting. It would be could be attended by the public, and maybe there would be more than our strategic planning meeting, and it could be live streamed, but also we could separately report out after that in each of our distribution channels, communication channels, what it is we discussed, and hopefully that word gets out there more broadly than it does now. But any other?
No, I'm thinking that if you have all of those bodies in open discussion about topics of great interest to the community, and then it's open, we could be here for a week. The meeting could last for a week.
Well, I think we'd try to have an agenda, and we would.
Stick to it.
I'm always welcome additional input, but generally kind of like we've had, it's just you have a question or something we easily respond to, or something we haven't thought about, not that we're inviting, dozens and dozens of community
Yeah, and
comments.
I also think that kind of the concept was more of a steering committee. It wasn't necessarily a problem-solving body, but they identified an issue, prioritized an issue, and then formed a task force to fix the problem or address the problem. These guys or gals
I like the
more focused.
concept.
Yeah.
And as Lance said, let's try it and see where it goes.
Yeah,
Or maybe that was you, sorry, Russ.
All right, so, okay, at least fairly easy at the first iteration of this, okay? The next topic was a recommendation of the Planning Commission. We've touched upon this already on several other contexts and our different themes, is whether we want to utilize some of our balance sheet reserve funds to support or fund our own version of a Greenbelt Fund, similar to the county's fund or the state's conservation bank. And the question is, if there is support for that, I'm certainly supportive of that, how do we operationalize that? What does that look like? I think we have, Kate here from Low Country Land Trust, but I was discussing this at the last Johns Island Task Force meeting, and Chairman Boykin immediately said, wonderful concept that you guys have here. We'd love to work with you, and we're happy to put anybody you want together with our Greenbelt Fund staff. So what we could look at, if there's support for beginning to operationalize this, tasking a council member and some others to work with some of these others, so we don't reinvent the wheel, to come up with what this fund or structure might look like, how we would handle applications, what would be the criteria for potentially entertaining request for fee simple acquisitions or conservation easements from Conservation Land Trust, whether there would be a requirement for public use or not, as we discussed yesterday, those kinds of things. That's
So maybe I'll start this. I think this is a great idea in terms of, we talked about preserving the corridors, preserving bigger blocks to limit development, which has an ancillary effect of reducing traffic. I think this is a little bit the cart before the horse. And I think the thing that we need to do, and we've talked about it, and I'll take responsibility for not showing leadership in this, is we need to get a comprehensive list of what are the desirous needs of our capital budget, and how should we prioritize those. And conservation and the Greenbelt Initiative should be one of those. But we've talked about a lot of things. We're doing a couple of things. We got plans for one thing that's going on. I think we literally ought to develop a comprehensive list, and everybody's got kind of, I don't want to call them pet projects, but good ideas. And I think we should look at that and then prioritize this within the context of that. And then understand kind of a cash flow statement. We've got, as you talk about, $50 million. We've got money coming in. We've got money going out. We've got interest coming in. How do we think about this over a long period of time? It makes me nervous when we talk about we've got this big pot of reserves, and how do we deploy this, and how do we leverage this, and do we incent this group or incent that group? I'd like for us to think about this holistically rather than kind of this issue or that issue, and we're going to do this and do this. And that would be kind of my approach.
I had the exact same thought. I was going to say it a little bit differently, but I'll adopt your words. We're spending a lot of money. We're talking about additional land purchase aside from this green belt. We're spending a lot of money on the design of the cultural facility. We're going to spend a lot of money on the construction. And we're going to spend a lot of money for the outfitting of it. And then we're going to spend hopefully not a lot of money on the septic. I want to slow down, at least pause. and let the dust settle, and have a plan of what we're going to be doing in the future along the lines of what Mr. Farrell just said.
And yesterday, we talked about taking a solution-oriented approach versus a project-oriented approach. And I think that's exactly what you're outlining. And I've messaged to self, I need to do that more with my committees. Because we tend to be tactical, and we're good at tactical implementation. But yeah, I gotta be, with my groups, and I think we as a council should be taking, first we should approach things with the solution-oriented approach.
I'm not sure what you mean in that regard.
Well, this is a project. And what Lance is saying is, instead of taking a look at one project, let's look at our very, very broad objectives and how we come to solutions to those objectives.
It's part of what this is supposed to be about, is the strategic, this is the things we've been discussing the last couple of days. What are our broader strategic priorities? And then how do we think about best achieving those? We spent a lot of time yesterday talking about, and even earlier this morning, talking about the whole, Betsy Carson corridor, watershed, marsh health, et cetera, and all of that. That's the overall strategic priority, to protect all of that, lack of a better term. And this is one potential tool in helping to do that.
I'm uncomfortable doing too much at once,
Too much of what?
spending a lot of money.
But nobody, to be clear, nobody at this juncture is talking about spending any money, let alone a particular amount of money. The question is, is there a structure? Can we start talking about operationalizing a structure for something like a Greenbelt Fund? We don't then have to make a decision about how much and how we fund or finance any applications that we might want to receive.
So if I could jump in too.
Yeah.
So, and I've talked to each of you individually that, I think that when the dust settles, I expect that we'll agree it's a priority to do something like this. And then, like Brad said, we'll, decide how much to invest in something like this. And what Luke's suggesting, I think you all are suggesting about, we need a more comprehensive approach to capital and funding and spending initiatives. I'm all for that too. My ask, and I think I've told you all, I'd like to head this up because I think it's really important. Every time I see a new billboard going up, I wish we'd started this 5 years ago. A billboard to sell up a tract of land that could end up creating congestion, environmental, all kinds of problems for the broader end of Johns Island that we're on here. I'm trying to get my words together. But I think that these things can happen in parallel. Because like Brad said, I don't think anybody's wanting to make a funding decision today, but there's a lot of shovel work I think that needs to happen. Meeting with players like Low Country Land Trust and the Conservancy, meeting with the Greenbelt, understanding just how to breathe something like this to life. I think if we do it serially, we'll be 2 more years down the road and wish we'd taken some action.
And I'm only suggesting that we take the additional step prioritizing before we make some of the bigger decisions.
And I would certainly support that. That was my recommendation. But also in prioritization, there's several different approaches or ways we could do this. So we could set up our own fund, or we could prioritize supporting Low Country Land Trust, Greenbelt, and KICA, or KIC, or whatever the new name is, sorry, Sea Islands. We could go that route too. So rather than creating another organization, we could just agree to support those 3 directly.
But actually, what I thought about this in terms of Greenbelt Fund was that's exactly what we're doing. We're just setting up a slightly more formal mechanism than somebody just bringing something to council. That this would be a structure So council's not doing the initial vetting, that would receive applications from exactly those organizations. They'll come in and we're proposing to preserve or get a conservation easement on this piece of property somewhere in Johns Island. We've got, State Conservation Bank funding. We've got some Greenbelt funding, county Greenbelt funding. We've got a gap, and we'd love to, see if the town of Kiawah Island be interested in participating in that. They would send us an application, and there would be some entity, a group that would be, evaluating that against the criteria that we've established. Maybe geographic criteria, amount of money, purpose, whatever. So it is rather than, by the way, I'm not averse to simply saying, bring it to us directly, but I'm just not sure we're in the best position of evaluating, which we can do even before we have this set up, to evaluating that right now. This would just be a structure, a mechanism like the county has to be able to formally receive and evaluate these kinds of applications.
There may be, like you said, instances where we want to pursue property for conservation or something, but I think by and large, as we put the structure for this together, it's going to be just what you described. And, Kate, if you want to share anything, you can, but I had lunch with Low Country Land Trust a couple weeks ago, and just having a program in place helps them with private investors too, who are like, okay, there's other skin in the game. So I don't think we're writing $2 million checks for 15 acres. I think we're contributing temporarily sometimes, several $100,000 that helps them do their job or the Conservancy do their job. And then some of that sometimes comes back.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are opportunities for reimbursable grants.
I think that's all, again, I'm supportive of this, but I can think of 12, another 4, another 2, another 1. We're $20 million like in the next 2 years that we're going to spend. So kind of to Mr. Berner's point, we've got sort of locked a lot of that in, maybe not. Let's get that on paper. Let's get on paper what else our wish list is and then prioritize that. And this is one of those things. Rather than just moving forward ahead with this and then not prioritizing everything else against it.
We're a long ways from ever considering
Yeah, this is,
right?
once you take a long time to get this kind of structure in place, long before you make any decisions about how much to fund it.
If I may offer a suggestion, I'm Kate Park Schaefer. Actually, it's so fun to be here and to listen to this discussion and to see the growth of the town, to be in this position. I used to be on the Turtle Patrol at Kiawah when I was 12, and that was several lifetimes ago. So it's really wonderful personally to be here. But professionally, what I do work for Low Country Land Trust, and one of the things I've been able to do with the Land Trust and other organizations is talk about these public funding mechanisms. So I think you're right on the money to encourage a comprehensive approach, and what may help you as you think about starting a program like this is looking at the scoring criteria for the Greenbelt program and for Beaufort County and Jasper County. Those are the two I know most intimately. But what that does is it lets you see the list of comprehensive criteria that those localities use to make their funding decisions. And I think that, put in context with the other funding decisions you have to make, would really help shape the program. For example, Jasper County passed a sales tax in 2024, and I'm working with them to establish the ordinance, the application, and the scoring criteria for how they make the funding decision. So they started collecting that money in 2025, and they haven't made a single allocation yet, but the work they're doing to set up the program is informing how they're going to spend that money. And one of their most acute needs is to improve land around their boat landings. Water access in Jasper County is really important. So you all may have a different acute need. If you think about Johns Island, you're thinking probably about growth management and curb cuts along Betsy Carrison, Bohicket, and how you're taking care of Johns Island as a neighbor. So your scoring criteria is going to look a little different than their scoring criteria, right? But that allows you to say, okay, these 15 things are important to us as an island. in context with the other funding decisions that are important to you. And then what that allows land trusts to do, whether it's Low Country or the Conservancy or others, is come to you and say, hey, guess what? We have a project that meets the things that are important to you in a predictable manner, because I've seen it done both ways. With Charleston Greenbelt and Jasper County and Beaufort Green Space and the State Conservation Bank, there's a competitive application process. Every quarter, I know we could apply for funds in a predictable manner that meet the needs of our landowners and the conservation objectives. If you do it ad hoc, you might be able to do some really cool projects, but there's not that predictability that you can turn around and say to your constituents, hey, we care about these 15 things, and this is how I know the remaining $15 million, I'm picking a number, is going to be spent, right? And so if we bring projects toward you, I mean, I'll be shameless in doing that. It's a great opportunity. You're certainly a funding partner and would certainly come to you with projects that we think are incredible and that are matched with state and local dollars. But you may want to start by looking at that scoring criteria and defining what's really important to you, because what that signals to the land trusts and the landowners is that this funding source could be a good fit. Does that make sense?
So it kind of gets back to your point, and I understand and agree. It's, are we attaching some level of priority without deciding what that is to this in the overall use of our resources, much as the county is going through its process of, how to allocate the TST dollars. And their preliminary coming to the conclusion that 20% of all TST would be part of the Greenbelt, go into the Greenbelt Fund, to support the Greenbelt Fund, because it meets all these strategic objectives. Direct infrastructure investment is 80% of it, and that's broken down between, I don't remember who said, some of it is actually bike and ped trails, and some of it is roads, and some of it is others. But they're making a decision. They haven't made any decision about financing anything yet,
Right.
But it's to actually fund this program to support these broader strategic objectives. But we do have to agree that these are broader strategic objectives long before we decide how much of our resources we want to devote to achieving those strategic objectives.
Well, yes and no. Yes and no.
Okay.
I am all for spending money for this concept. I'm all for it. A lot of it is the timing, but when I said yes and no, it's also the amount. Maybe it's because I'm a numbers guy, I want to have a plan. I want to know what were our short-term, and I'm only talking 5 years from now, what our short-term expenditures are going to be dipping into this reserve fund that we have. And don't forget, we have potentially a significant payment this year for Captain Sam's. We're spending a lot of money in the next 2 years, and it scares me to death. I want to slow down after that.
So I'm curious why, I'm biggest supporter of being prudent about the use of public resources, but I'm not sure why you're scared to death, because
we're looking at 50% of our reserve being gone in 2 years.
That is
No,
not.
yes it is, yes it is. 20 million for the building, X for Captain Sam's, the architectural fees,
We actually
the
just.
other property we want to buy.
We went through this,
a
Russ,
lot.
yesterday. Number one, the building's not 20 million.
12, you're right,
12.
12.
But apart from that, again, it doesn't have to, there doesn't have to be an impact, a dollar's impact on
Yes,
the reserves
that's
of the building.
the plan, and I think, Mr.
Yeah.
Farrell, that's the plan I want to see. Are we talking about a couple of $100,000 for the green belt, or a couple of $1 million on these expenditures?
And we don't know, that's all I'm asking.
But that's all
is-
part of, I can't get my arms, and I say whether I'm for or against this until we have a plan. And this
That's
is
what
a
I'm-
perfect time to talk about it.
That's what I'm
This is a
suggesting,
perfect
is
time.
let us build a plan, and it's going to take a while to do that.
So
And-
I'll just give you top of my head numbers. Number one, my view is we should not dip into my own personal view, but we discussed financing options, is that this building, from the very beginning, the addition, doesn't need to touch the reserve funds at all. We can borrow and we can defease the tax, so there's no impact whatsoever on any of our
Right,
reserve.
and so.
So that's one, that's
And
one.
we need to go, and I'm all for that, but let's go through the cash flow model, what happens for that one iteration. Now, the next one is
We can
Captain Sam's.
solve, that one's easy to solve for. If we issue debt, we have the proceeds from issuing the debt. Cash flow isn't an issue because you've got separate segregated funds. All the cash is going to go out you've received $10 or $12 million in bond proceeds, and that's all going to be spent in 2 years. Full stop. You're not touching, you haven't touched the reserve fund, and then you're defeasing that bond out of state tax funds over 10 years. So that's a solution, one solution for.
I completely got
Okay,
it.
so that's that. So let's then we can identify that we're going to potentially spend, another
X.
X dollars in direct infrastructure,
I
whether.
was referring to Captain Sam's as X. I don't think we can talk
No,
about.
no, well, so by the way, I have no issue of saying, putting a number associated with what I would be comfortable with devoting to, conservation easements or land acquisition, of which that would be part, if that comes to fruition, and there's some number on top of that, which I would be perfectly comfortable with, because we haven't touched the 50 yet, and we don't need to worry about catastrophic costs, we're fully insured. So, yes, I agree that we need to carefully evaluate that. That's part of what the exercise yesterday morning that we started it off with was. All the potential calls.
Yes, I want to see it on paper, though. And I don't mean words, I want to see the cash flow.
But you can't do a cash flow model because right now, we don't know what applications we would receive.
Sure you can. You can guess. You can forecast. You can have a certain number of assumptions. We do this all the time. You have assumptions and prepare your cash flow going forward.
Okay, just on something like the Greenbelt Fund, it wouldn't be set up for another year or so. And let's just say hypothetically that we decided to it's just simply an accounting matter, move $2 million of our current capital reserve, which is not restricted, and it's.
We have unrestricted funds.
Yes, and that, like, it's been beach renourishment as well as just capital project. We've moved over that, and then we may or may not start to receive applications, and you could determine that the application would not be, no more than 150,000, 250,000 on any one project or not. And so, you're looking at maybe an outflow of a couple $1 million over 2 or 3 years, or not. They don't know if any projects meet the criteria.
And we can get examples of other projects that Low Country and Conservancy have done, just as benchmarks to give us an
Okay,
idea.
so, and that's great, and that's part of what I'm looking for. We're looking at an outlay of 100,000 or $1 million or $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we're just talking, but there's no, I'm not
So
getting the finite
I'm thinking to
answers.
be meaningful, there would be some not insignificant amount of money in the, attached to the Greenbelt Fund, how much money you would want to allocate to any specific application would depend on our other criteria, what other funding sources they've got, whether it meets all our criteria or not, and we could limit.
I look at it completely different. How much are we, and this is why we're here talking about it.
Yeah.
And we can put off the answer, how much are we, town council, willing to spend annually? And I haven't heard the answer yet.
Well,
I don't have an answer in my mind in that regard.
Well, what you did is exactly what I would like to do, and I think Mr. Byrne would like to do. Is you just verbally said, well, we've set aside $2 million and we could evaluate $150,000 a year per project.
I was just
That's a cash flow analysis on the Greenbelt Fund.
Okay.
Now take every other priority we have and line them up, and you can see 2026, 27, 28, what are our expectations and where are our different funds, reserves at.
Okay.
And you did one thing that's a little bit disingenuous. I'm
Okay.
going to call you on this, sorry.
Okay, fine.
When you say we're going to get, $12 million bond, we have to pay $12 million out 10 years or 5 years down the road.
I know, I absolutely.
So you just said was, oh, we're.
No, what I'm saying is
Defeasing it and all
you
this stuff.
defease that out of.
It's a cash flow analysis when you talk about that.
No, I already said it. You could do, you just decide, $1 million bucks a year.
So you're agreeing with Mr. Byrne and I, we put together cash flow analysis and we put together priorities and we look at those.
And then, if I may, every once in a while, I'm a little disconcerted when numbers like $7.5 million are tossed out to solve a problem at the corner of Maybank and River. Whether it's in jest or not, I go, oh, did we budget that?
No. The county and city are dealing with that issue.
I heard you last week and I heard you again today, Brad.
It was a rhetorical, it was a rhetorical point to simply describe that we have resources available that other jurisdictions don't. That's all. That was all it was tended to be.
Okay, thank you. But our
One thing-
resources are not infinite.
From a land conservation perspective, that I would say that picks up on exactly what you're saying in this discussion about cash flow, is there is a cost avoidance component too to any land conservation investment. So if you're making an investment in conservation easement, you're taking cars off the road, you're avoiding costs, and when it comes to transportation dollars being
Kate,
spent.
that is a compelling argument from the standpoint of the county or city, but because these are conservation easements in the county or city, what we're looking at is
Sure.
we would not have to ourselves be investing that infrastructure. There's a beneficial impact and less traffic congestion. There's not quite the same connection on the need to invest in the infrastructure to support those roads.
Absolutely, but there is a congestion avoidance, there may be a resilience avoidance. And so I think if you're going to go down the road of quantifying these things, those are cost avoidant numbers that you may be interested in seeking too. Again, if your priority to invest in land conservation is to address issues of growth management or resilience or quality of life, there are numbers you can associate with that. And that's my point. You're right. You're not paying for the building of the roads like the county or the state may be, but you are paying for the congestion or the, what have you. And you mentioned beach renourishment too. There's precedent for doing this type of work. The town of Hilton Head has a beach renourishment program that goes toward, or tax fees that goes toward land conservation as well as part of the.
By the way,
Bingo on beach renourishment, because I've got a list of projects that I'd love to see.
And that's fine, let's feed them in, and I'm happy to sit down, you and I, just over the next week, and do the high-level cash flow. But understand, literally, this fiscal year, we're gonna have a $4 million surplus. Increase, going into, because we're at 50, it's gonna be 52 at the end of the year. So we have the next, keep generating surpluses for what? For
And I
what?
would be remiss if I didn't say, and then I'll stop talking, the land's not getting any cheaper, which is often why we see these programs start and they bond money to be able to spend more money up front, because money we can spend in 2026 will protect more land by all estimations than money we spend in 2032.
That was a great point. It's not only is it not getting any cheaper, but what they shared with me at lunch was by the time the sign goes up, the land's for sale, that emotional decision has been made to get the development and return on investment for their property. So we just want to do all the studying and analysis to try to determine what a program could look like.
And to be perfectly clear, I am supportive. Conceptually.
So am I.
100%.
Now it's time to do the dirty work.
As am I, but my point is, there are 3, 4, 5, 7 other things that I can think of that some are on our list, some are not on our list. We should do the same analysis for.
Yes, I totally
And
agree.
then line them all up and say, where do we get the biggest bang for our buck? What's the most important thing for us and our constituents? What's going to be the most impactful? Weighing all we got to bring the cost elements in from, kind of the way Kate talked about it, and the cost elements.
So we'll
So it's
do that side by side, and that will inform our decision as to whether or not to fund a Greenbelt Fund and how much. But right now, we're just beginning the process of operationalizing what a structure would look like and establishing criteria.
For future consideration.
Okay.
That's kind of all right now.
So we're just creating the skeleton and we're not even putting meat in the bones yet.
That's correct, and I would be happy to do so because I kind of have the numbers in my head on the potential calls, but yes, I understand the desire of others to see all of that on paper, and we'll do that.
And just to be totally clear, so what would be more important to our constituents? And this is the reason for prioritization. If we took some amount of money and built some amenity, whatever that is, an indoor pool or something, built some amenity, or give it to the Greenbelt. You'd have to evaluate kind of the cost-benefit analysis for both of those. So I'm supportive, I'm just saying, let's do it comprehensively rather than.
Well, I don't disagree that if there were direct trade-offs, there may not need to be direct trade-offs. There may be other policy decisions or operational decisions involved in one versus the other. But it's just like, any allocation, like same thing, transportation tax, they're making a decision already at a high level, the amount that would go to actually roads, amount would go to amenities infrastructure, amounts would go to leisure trails, and amount would go to Greenbelt Fund. Just that they're making those kind of broad policies. They're going to solve for all of those, and here are their percentage allocations to each of those.
And maybe this is just a difference. I mean, I came out of the private side. We never made a decision until there was a cash flow analysis. I mean, I can't think of one time we didn't go through a cash flow analysis before the executive committee made a decision. And maybe that's because that's the way I grew up.
Okay.
But that's the way I grew up.
Well, we can certainly do that. We've already made the decision, for example, on where we could potentially spend up to $1 million over here. No need to do that for the foreseeable future, but we can certainly factor that into a 5-year. Assume that we're going to do that within 5 years. Beach Walker Drive, we're going to factor that in. It's going to have to be within 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and you talked about paving out here.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, I know. There are so many things that we keep talking about spending money.
And you add every one of those up, and they don't get close to the existing amount that we're adding $4 million to every year. So I keep pointing, at what point does it stop? What is the purpose?
And maybe we want to see a cash flow analysis.
Fine, we'll do that.
And I'll reach out to everybody individually this week. What are things that you see that we need to spend capital on?
Yes, absolutely.
For example, the top of my list is going to be causeway resiliency. What happens if the causeway gets blown down? Yeah, I know the bridge is insured, but the rest of the causeway, what's the cost of that? What's the probability? How much, when in the future? So it's those things where this is strategic. Whatever the next 5 to 10 years, where would we have big capital projects? And I'll reach out to all of you.
But that's exactly what we should be doing as a part of our CIP. Actually, is capital improvement plan, investment plan. That's actually what we should be doing on an ongoing basis. So absolutely. And no question, I'm comfortable that there's going to be more than enough there to achieve all these priorities.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure you and I convince everybody else
Yes.
and our constituency
Yes.
that there's more than enough.
Yes.
And I just was going to say, and the public, I think the public would be a little disappointed if we didn't go through this analysis.
And again, I've internalized that. That's not fair to everybody else who hasn't thought about this. So yes, we'll make sure that we'll pull all that together. But would still like to, task you with sitting down with the Greenbelt Fund or other stakeholders to begin to put together something and come back to us as what a Greenbelt Fund program might look like, assuming we make a subsequent decision to fund it and the amount that we would decide to, the amount that we might decide to fund that at a future time.
And this is especially important with Paul sitting in the room because one of the things that Kika does that we don't do is they have a reserve set aside for road replacement based on the age of their roads. And they have a real, last time I saw, it was a real nice kind of cash flow analysis that, you know, the roads have this life, these roads are going to be replaced. You have 60 or 70% set aside today, or what's the number set aside, do you know? What's the number set aside for road replacement in your reserves today?
For roads in particular, or
Yeah.
all infrastructure?
Well, you could do either one.
Well, the total reserve fund currently is $26 million. And over the last 5 years, the level of our funding, which is to say the aggregate depreciation of our infrastructure that will need to be spent in the future, has gone from about 50% to close to 100%.
So they're setting aside, and I'm not suggesting we do this, in fact, I'm not sure Kika should do this, that's another subject. But they have reserves set aside today for future replacement, at some discounted value, but, so that's another thing.
So do we.
Yeah, exactly.
We already have 10 million set aside.
Exactly, that type of thing is need to be thought about in the context of our $50 million and
Yeah, I mean,
what we're gonna do.
we have set aside, the difference, we've just been it's been in the weird position that we've financed all these capital projects out of operation
Cash.
revenues in the past because we've been able to. And because we have a $4 million surplus, we could continue to do a lot of that. It's not necessarily the best approach.
Right.
And so that's exactly why we should look at this. But we do know in the reserve study, part of why we undertook the reserve study was specifically to answer some of these questions for us collectively, for the staff and for the community is, what is the full replacement cost of all of these? What's the depreciation schedule? What do we need to, and we'll be seeing more of that when we get the reserve study coming in. But we should figure out, you know, what is the projected time frame for repaving all our roads? And how much is that going to cost? And make sure that we have sufficient resources set aside to do that, full stop. Those should be the highest priorities because that's the backbone, that's the core infrastructure. Everything else should be secondary to that.
And just as a data point, one of the things we've talked about in my committee, besides those things, is the bridge, for example. You know, we've had a bridge inspection done, but we're having a study done to find out what can we proactively do on the bridge to extend the life of the bridge, so it's further out till we end up having to replace it. So we're looking at those kind of things.
And you've raised this question before. I don't think it's necessary now, but it's going to be necessary at some point. But we should definitely look at what the time frame would be and cost associated with raising the Mingo curve. You know, whether they're 2 feet.
I think we should.
And so that's definitely something that we should put into this.
After our meeting 2 weeks ago with Weston and Sampson that Madeline and I co-hosted, that's going to become part of their the project they're working on. Yeah, recommendations.
Spec it out with costs or?
Yeah, well, yeah, we're negotiating that right now. Make sure that's-
The town did that about 5 years ago. Actually got a cost of raising Mingo, and it was concluded at that time, because I mean we reached the same conclusion, that there was no need to spend those resources. We still don't have any real nuisance flooding.
Yeah, starting with the likelihood, you know, have sea level rise data changed since we did it 6 or 8 years ago, as well as, you know, new data on storms and stuff like that. Does that change our thinking? How often do we expect it to happen? Is it just for high tide and then it's done and we can manage it, or do we need to invest in all those kinds
Well,
of
we
things?
had that December storm, I guess, 2 years or so ago, and it became impassable.
It did.
But that was a unique, very impactful storm, and it was for a very short period of time that was true.
The impact was a short duration, like you
Yeah.
said, and I may misquote this, but I think Lucas called that a 1,000-year event.
Yeah. Now, it may be that nobody predicted whether Kika from the ponds or anybody else was predicting kind of the nor'easter, the impact of that December nor'easter. It was just unusual. You know, a lot more surge than anticipated at high tide, and so that you had these not insignificant impacts. You know, hopefully that those unforeseen things will continue to occur. We'll get better data. But there's no question that if sea level rise continues and what used to be predicted high tides continue to get higher than they are, that we're going to start experiencing at some point probably some nuisance flooding, not just associated with storm, on Kiawah Island Parkway. And before we really get to that, I'm thinking that we would probably want.
So hopefully this new
I think-
modeling will
I
give
think
us
we should,
projections
yeah.
on that.
I think we should.
Yeah.
So let's understand what the cost of that is. You know, huge traffic implications getting out of
It has to, it would have to be done at night.
Yeah, so,
Get a ferry service.
yeah.
We need another gate though.
Anyway, okay, so.
This was good, this was a good discussion. It's,
Very
you know,
good, yeah.
very passionate on all sides, and I appreciate that.
Yep, thanks everybody.
Yes, thank you. Okay. This one, and for all of these reasons, this may be not a key priority right now, but again, it would be a potential use of our balance sheet, although not necessarily a net hit to the balance sheet. The idea here is the principal challenge that we face as a community, one of the principal challenges from a land use standpoint is redevelopment. We're in the later stage of primary development. It's going to be critical for property values and everything else that there be investment in redevelopment of aging infrastructure. John, I mean, Mark Permar, he's not here now, but a lot of he was saying earlier today, 70 or 80, you know, some of these, multifamily properties, and particularly the earlier ones on the west end of the island were built in the 70s or 80s. And, you know, their kind of useful life is, they're coming to the end of their useful life. And the question is, are they going to just continue to deteriorate or decay? And this is particularly a challenge for multifamily structures where you have multiple owners. And, you know, if you need new roofs, you need new windows, you need new infrastructure, you need more resiliency, how do you get everybody to agree to do that? And people want to avoid a special assessment, a huge special assessment. And is there a structure or mechanism that's in place? The town, again, utilizing its balance sheet just conceptually to provide an ability for them to avoid a special assessment, but borrow from a municipal finance redevelopment corporation. Again, other municipalities do have these. Very, very low cost, particularly if they do resiliency or, you know, development that is more environmentally friendly, to maybe zero cost financing. So they bake in the cost of that project into their assessments over long term. So incremental increase in assessments rather than a big special assessment. That's the idea or concept.
So I like the idea. Are you looking at just infrastructure or the aged out homes as well?
This would be I think most suited for a multifamily redevelopment. Most suitable. Doesn't mean you couldn't establish, you know, have other uses, but that's where the challenges, particular challenges come in getting, encouraging redevelopment in those types of projects.
Two of the projects that I'm aware of that were done recently were at Mariners Watch, and they had to do their staircases up to the second floor units. Not a resiliency issue, just a basic infrastructure. They were in serious state of disrepair. And then they redid the units at Parkside that have got decks out, docks out, onto the lake. And the cost associated with these projects is massive. You just don't want to be the property owner who's taken a $40,000 hit that you really didn't expect. And Windswept has had some really significant improvements as well. And they're painful if you're the one paying for them.
So the idea is try to potentially, is there a way to still encourage this, but mitigate or avoid the impact of large special assessments?
This is one of those, boy, that would be nice to have.
And I'm not saying, I may not, this is a more involved project and maybe put it on the kind of second tier priority. I'm thinking at some point in time, it might be appropriate to establish some task force to figure out how this could be done, look at other models in other municipalities. There are issues about, setting up an entity that may itself go out and borrow using the town's balance sheet and then, effectively loaning money to municipalities. I mean, not to municipalities, multifamily projects. You're getting a lien on that. You're collecting revenues through future assessments and all of that. It's involved, and it may be one that I would not necessarily, I think it's a long-term strategic issue, whether I would personally put it at as high as some of these other things.
So
No.
far out of my wheelhouse, I can't touch it. But
So I think about this in kind of two ways. First is, this is a very well-heeled community. And so we talked about property values just a few minutes ago offline. But I'm not sure I want to use the town's balance sheet to further incent well-heeled owners to do maintenance. We could debate that all day long. The other thing
I
is,
would separate maintenance. I mean, maintenance would not be, this would be for true,
okay, capital projects.
true redevelopment, yeah.
I think the thing that kind of concerns me is you've seen things in Florida with condos, you've seen something downtown Charleston with condos, and it ultimately comes between a battle of what the condo association wants to do or what they think they need to do on the building versus what the participants, the homeowners are willing to pay for. And the way I think about this is maybe the first step is putting in some regulation that gives more power to the condo association to really do a cost analysis and say, this is what our assessment needs to be to meet current code, so that they stay current with that all along and it doesn't become a $40,000 assessment down the road. But right now, the condo associations are powerless against raising dues to make sure that the facilities are adequately maintained or prepared for the future. And so that's kind of the way I'm struggling with this, but that's kind of one thing to think about is if the folks, maybe not in Florida, but the folks downtown, if they were paying as they went, then it wouldn't be this case where they're dislocated out of their apartment. And it's even a more or less powerful motivator here because a lot of these are rental units and they may be losing some rent, not being thrown out of their house. So I'm just throwing this out for a different way to think about this is how do we empower the condo associations to do the necessary work before it's a catastrophe?
I think, Brad, you were looking at this as something we can do with our cash balance, as using it as a basis for loaning out for work, if I have that correct.
Using our balance sheet or our borrowing capability associated with our balance sheet, yes.
Right, and so then they can take a low interest or zero interest loan against our principal to do whatever repairs. It's not.
To be clear.
I think you guys are talking two different things.
Not repairs. Ordinary repairs and maintenance is what you pay current assessments for. This is the idea, if you need it.
Redevelopment.
That's actually not true. Some of the assessment is for future capital
Well, they
projects.
do set aside.
Like a roof replacement.
Yes, they
or
do
siding
set
replacement.
aside, yes, you should be setting aside reserves. And part of the question, and I don't know, and maybe this isn't necessary, but we do, it's clear that some associations, whether they're vertical or horizontal, but multifamily projects or neighborhoods, are not sufficiently reserving for kind of essentially almost replacing the guts of a 70 or 80-year-old building. You can continue to repair, but at some point in time, does there need to be something more fundamentally done? Does all the plumbing and all the HVAC, all the windows, roof, all the siding and everything need to be replaced or not to keep it up to not just, I mean, what we think of as Kiawah standards? Yes, Paul.
So Luke, there are a couple of core issues that I think you're addressing right now, vis-a-vis condos and their wherewithal to replace the roof. Number one, many states, South Carolina is not one of them, not surprisingly, many states require under their not-for-profit HOA laws that there be engineering studies done, and that those engineering studies subsequently then require that there be certain funding. So in terms of regulation, South Carolina is behind the curve.
As a state.
The other thing that could happen from a regulatory point of view that does not happen is that when you're buying a property, there is a section in the communication that says, here's the funding in this HOA for replacement of the roof. It's either 0 or 50% or 80% or 100%. We don't do that either. So I do take your point, though, that I think there is some moral hazard here, that if the municipality finds a way to provide financing assistance to condo association number 1, then number 2, 3, 4, and 100 are going to expect the same treatment, and that's kind of tricky. But these condominium associations, our own included, this is a classic problem. The reason why the Watergate Condominium Association in Washington went into bankruptcy is they got themselves in a death spiral, and people wouldn't pay or couldn't pay, property values declined, and it spiraled and spiraled and spiraled until the only answer was bankruptcy. This is a very common but very complex problem, and there just is not a regulatory foundation that requires homeowners to not only pay routine maintenance, but to pay anticipatory maintenance to maintain common property. It is a big problem.
And so the issue is, again, I don't know, and whether this outlined is and was part of the Planning Commission's recommendations, it may be a bridge too far for us, but I think you need to face the prospect as a community of what are the implications of a lot of aging housing stock and the lack of incentive and resources to appropriately not just maintain, I mean, apart from maintain, but to reinvest in that property so as to not negatively impact the whole broader community. Because the last thing any of us want is just dilapidated, the whole West End full of dilapidated.
And I would say the resort has a big stake in this too, because their business model is to use those condos.
Yeah, and many of those condos, you're right, and this is a conversation that's been had. They're part of their concerns. They don't own those right now, the 400 or so units that they manage. So they're not putting the money in. They've got to rely on the owners to do so. Right.
So Paul, I have a question. You said you live in a condo?
We do.
You do, okay.
It's called Kika.
Okay.
We live in one in DC, so I've dealt with these issues in DC.
We have a townhouse in Connecticut, and that has a HOA too.
Oh, no, but I was referring to, all right, so my question is that Every year, we have an insurance agent or broker or adjuster come to our house and inspect our house. Every single year. They nitpick me. And
Your personal house?
Correct.
Yeah.
Here in Kiawah. And I'm bringing it up because I'm just curious if the same kind of inspection happens on these condominiums, because my house would not be able to get to the poor dilapidated state that we're theorizing about, and I'm sure you understand both. They wouldn't allow it to happen because I wouldn't be able to get insurance.
But
So
that
the same thing happened here
that
for-
inspection that you're referring to is a voluntary effort. It isn't required.
No, it's required.
By whom?
The insurance company. 100%, Paul.
We don't do one.
Yeah, we don't either.
I can't get insurance. They will not cover me unless I allow
Wait, is
them.
your house 100 years old?
No.
Because we just got our re-upped and we have never had an inspection,
I am unaware that this is
other than
common
originally.
practice.
Every year we get an inspection.
Who's the company they're with?
Yeah,
I
a
think it's
different company.
corporate.
I'm sorry?
Corporate entity by corporate entity, insurance companies have different inspection requirements. And yours might be, I don't know why, but I take your point, Paul. I don't know what the answer is. My quick and easy answer is always let the market forces take care of it. But there's a big cost in letting market forces take care of it. I'll be the first to acknowledge it.
Honestly, Luke, I disagree. The public policy here, which would cost nothing, is to require that brokers disclose the existence of a replacement reserve fund.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't,
That's a
this is not a place
zero-cost
for.
public policy.
This is not a market forces, because there's the cost here, just the aesthetic cost for the island is unacceptable to me to let something deteriorate. So I'm looking for a regulatory mechanism that's not, I think giving money away or low-cost loans or whatever, I don't think that's the solution.
And it may not be.
But we have a budding problem. That I will definitely agree for.
And I don't, and maybe there's, again, a future time, maybe it's not as high priority as some kind of task force of people that can better figure this stuff out as to what is the appropriate solution set. But we're already looking, we can see already, and apropos some of our conversations involving some of these, I don't want to name them, issues of, really, really aging housing stock that's not getting the investment it needs. And it's not being maintained to anything close to, and even maintenance is still not at some point in time, it just doesn't reflect kind of where we want or need the island to be.
So Sherry has reminded me that there is an organization on the island called the Regime Council.
Yes.
That Todd Bonet heads or co-heads. And
Carol.
I would be surprised if that group hasn't addressed this issue, but I don't know that they have.
Well, I've actually had very brief I've had high-level conversation with Todd and Carol, but it also came up in context when I was raising this when John and I were visiting one of the multifamily large regimes. And they said, when is this happening? When I just floated this concept, because they wanted to kind of tap into this, so it was to avoid special assessments. But again, I appreciate the moral hazard issues. I'm not sure that this is the right role of the municipality. I hesitate to figure out how you put guardrails around all of this. But I want us to think about how we as a community deal with this next challenge of redevelopment.
I think that's the right thing to do. I mean, this came up maybe as far as 2 years ago.
2019 as well, when the
Yeah,
housing study was done.
In the Kiawah Next, and it's a great idea, incenting redevelopment so that the island stays high quality across the island. And even then, thinking back, I haven't come up with anything in 2 years now. There's a lot of people smarter than I am, but it's not an easy problem to solve. How do you incent people to do the right thing and spend money?
And again, this is super conceptual, and we do have a balance sheet that would allow for this to some degree. But again, this is one where personally I haven't looked at any of the other municipal models that have established these entities to even begin to understand how these really work and practice and what they cover and don't. Maybe again, this is, I don't know, maybe we'll turn this over to the planning commission or something, allow them to set up some, future task force, now they can figure out whether this is a priority. So maybe, I'm getting the sense that right now, this is maybe too much to even explore in depth, or at least at the council level. And if the planning commission or somebody, some subordinate portion of that wants to start work on that, and or the regime council wants to approach the planning commission or something.
Yeah. And let me know, because one of the things that just jogged my memory in this discussion, because this discussion took place, like John said, under 2 mayors ago. Part of this, when we were looking at our short-term rentals and adding the cap, a lot of people talked about we didn't have the data to support a number of the reason why the council was looking at caps. So we did council commission, and we have an HR&A study, and I'm going to check, because I think as part of that study, they talked about our aging, some of our aging housing stock here, and I think they put in some recommendations in there. So I'll pull that and at least just share that with you guys if you don't have that, whomever would like to see it. You can dust that.
I'll give you just a little bit of the other side, then I'll stop talking. But I look at areas, we've got friends in Inlet Cove and in Knight Heron Park, and I'm going to guess, I don't know, maybe 20% of those cottages have been remodeled. You can see new windows, new roofs, everything is. Some haven't done anything in 50 years. Some have been completely gutted and redone entirely from the shell in. And, that's happening by normal market forces. They bought it at a good price, and now the price is appreciated. So I think there's a need there for redevelopment and updating of houses, and how we incent that is kind of the question before us.
Well, and I agree that individual homeowners can take it upon themselves to make decisions about their properties, and they have. If somebody does and their next door neighbor lets that deteriorate, that impacts them. But that is at least the individual homeowners that get gutting and replacing, they can make that decision unilaterally themselves. It's the unique challenges with some of these large multifamily where no one or even a significant number of well-intentioned homeowners can necessarily make it happen. Oh, okay. All right. Let's take a break till 10:30, and then we'll kind of 2:30. I'm sorry, and focus on trying to wrap up in the next 30 minutes and just kind of recap some of the action items from yesterday and today. Fine. Okay. So let's kind of talk about to recap some of the action items. discussion and action items as well as today, and figure out if there's anything we're missing or anything else anybody wants to bring up. So from yesterday, we went through all the fiscal issues and particularly related to reserve, tying that into today's discussion. We have the reserve study that has a lot of cash flow analysis and with regard to all our existing assets and infrastructure, but Councilmember Farrell and I and Dorota will sit down apropos of our discussion here at today and come up with some type of projected demand or call and all that and cash flow associated with that. And we'll get that back to everybody. And as part of that, if anybody has, where's Councilmember? Oh, he's over
right there. He's
If
right
anybody has any projects that would require, fiscal resources that they want to make sure are part of this assessment, then we'll do that. We'll try to do that in fairly short order. The Civic and Cultural Center addition, the action item there is, and with again, Councilmember Farrell and Dorota and whomever else he wants to involve in this, trying to figure out what is the best financing approach for this. Staffing issues, some form of dedicated, the discussion was around some form of dedicated resiliency position, and Councilmember Kay and the town administrator, I believe, will come up with kind of a notional, conceptual position description around all of that to see if we can get buy-in as to whether this is a position that's well-defined and can be supported, and then if so, put in to the budget. While we're on staffing, one issue I neglected to raise yesterday, I'm kind of reluctant to get into it much now, but it needs to be revisited at some point, is legal counsel. The fact of the matter is that it's exceedingly difficult and getting more difficult with each and every day to get kind of legal counsel that is responsive. And responsive at all, but certainly timely responsive. And as a result, and it's been true in the past and it's not a good thing, is we have me, staffers, the town clerk, the administrator actually drafting the languages of ordinances and code provisions. It's not an ideal situation. That's a lot of basic blocking and tackling. We're always going to have to go outside for some bigger picture issues, but there are so many things you raised yesterday, Luke, my desire to move forward with kind of decriminalizing the code and separating out those things that are clearly, in my view, civil infractions versus those that are misdemeanors, public exposure, et cetera, things like that. Those are classic misdemeanors. But it literally need work with counsel to be able to do that, and we just don't have that. And so I'm back to where I was a couple of years ago, and I know there was some pushback at that time, maybe there still is the potential for having in-house counsel that would handle a lot of this day-to-day basic blocking and tackling stuff and could be more responsive to all of us and do the basic research on a lot of these issues and prepare memoranda for us.
So also, if I may, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor, I think we've also talked about the issue of outside counsel representing exclusively us in some negotiations, and had they've represented us or they've made negotiations without our approval. So I'm fully supportive of you taking a look at counsel and options for us.
So one of the things we might, I don't know, we can explore it. It would not be an inexpensive position. So it would be a relatively highly paid staff position, just kind of the nature of the beast, and it just may be too much. I don't know, and I don't know what's out there, and I don't know quite how to look at this other than potentially just come up with a position description, although that's not hard, but then actually post it and see what we get.
There's a lot of municipal attorneys in-house.
And I have to apologize profusely in advance. I really do. Any attorney we hire in-house is going to report to you, and he's just going to be another you. And I don't think we want that. We want somebody who's going to be free-thinking. I'm dead serious. And I'm sorry again for saying that. I don't think that's,
What I'm talking about is we need somebody that Boone Aiken used to do a fair amount of this, it's not happening anyway. Literally, every one of our ordinances needs the whereas clauses, drafting, and the language of the ordinances. The staff's doing that, and we're not competent to that. I can kind of do it, but I don't want to be doing it. That's the kind of stuff, basic legal research.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
question, two questions
Yep.
maybe? So the franchise ordinance that we're working on, I'm lucky I've got somebody on my committee who's a South Carolina bar attorney who's helping with it, and then another attorney who's not South Carolina bar, but he's helping. Are there any volunteers in the community? One is my first question that maybe we should explore, and two, that just want to help and are competent, or would a paralegal work?
A well-trained paralegal might. Hadn't given a lot of thought. I don't know how many kind of well-trained. There are really good paralegals in the rest of the world. I haven't heard about many of them around here. Yes.
I'm interjecting on that thought. I had a conversation with Mac at we had some downtime at one of the SPIT off-site meetings. And he said that artificial intelligence was going to virtually eliminate the need for paralegals in the short term, and could eliminate the need for a lot of attorneys as well. I would explore whether or not there's somebody that we could outsource to that would fill the need you have. You're not talking about really sophisticated litigation where we need somebody at the top.
No, not at all. This would be daily, basic blocking.
But blocking and tackling on ordinance writing, I think between a talented paralegal and somebody skilled in AI could maybe take care of this issue.
One thing in the legal field, you've got to be, and there are plenty of lawyers have been sanctioned for them using AI, and AI simply been wrong and gotten their clients in trouble. So you have to have somebody the capability that actually understands how to ask the question and get the input.
Yes, I'm just saying it's something as basic as ordinance writing. Perhaps that could satisfy our needs.
So ordinance writing is one of those things. So we have, ordinances all the time. Just writing memos on what are the key, attorney general opinions or the key state law provisions, this key court cases on any one of these issues that come up. I read them all. I'd rather not have to read them all. I'd rather have just a memo. But for the benefit of you guys, rather than you just hearing from me, if there was a lawyer said, here's a synopsis of all the key cases on the issue that you guys were discussing, takings or something, or are there any takings implications to a beach overlay? What are the issues that are involved, etc. But all this kind of ongoing research, just follow up to get data and information. Again, Mac, he seemed the one that suggested you guys probably need that. Whenever, this is not a diss on Mac McQuillan because I don't think it's unique whatsoever, but you try to reach him, he's in a mediation all day, or something else, and it takes a week. It's just not what I'm used to get back, and then it is a reminder. Yes, and how many different towns is he? Five?
To include us.
Yeah, it's wrong. I mean, what you're saying is correct, and that's just wrong.
And it presents conflicts. He was conflicted out of providing, we were actually on the track to
Mr.
do
Mayor,
something.
I think we're all in agreement. You should pursue a course of action you think you need to pursue in getting additional help or new help or whatever it is.
I'm not sure you were all in agreement. There seemed to be a different point.
Or then just replace them with somebody else.
Well, I'm not convinced that if we simply have somebody who's part-time for us and has all the other clients, South Carolina Bar operates very differently than the legal profession I'm used to elsewhere. And it's,
I have a hard time believing we need a full-time attorney.
And I think there is at least the opportunity to look at something that would meet your needs, but that would not be fully.
but I don't know quite, I don't know exactly what that means. Going out, hiring a paralegal and trying to figure out
Or an
whether.
attorney who devotes one half of their time
There was a
to
lady.
a business.
There was another lady who we had a resume from who was quite good, and we went with Mac because we were more comfortable with the big firm. But we all liked the other woman's name. I forget who she was. But I thought she was capable. We even interviewed her.
I think we all agree that there's a problem, right?
Yeah.
And I think we just let the mayor come to us with solutions, not just
Well, he
maybe
can
one.
have the solution for me, a full-time attorney, I can't imagine we need a full-time.
But we already have a part-time town attorney. We have his whole firm, and we can't.
Replace him.
We could do that. The question is whether we could go out with a new, a solicitation and see what we get. I think he would probably understand that. I'm not persuaded, given our experience in the past and, what other, the bottom line is either somebody is going to be working fully devoted to our interest, or they're going to be having a bunch of different clients.
So Sandy's a volunteer, right? Our judge, our magistrate, whatever he is.
Yeah.
Huh? Or is he-
Yes. Judge
Um,
Hayne?
I'm just wondering if there's somebody on the island that doesn't want a demanding law firm job, so would be happy to work whatever we need, paid or unpaid. I mean, there may be somebody here that's the slowdown that they're looking for. They don't mind doing whereases.
Or replace him. I don't remember, I think you were on the replacement committee? No, I forget who I was.
Yeah.
But anyway, we interviewed this woman. and
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
We liked her a lot.
Yeah.
And we only went with Mac, as I just said, because we felt more comfortable with a bigger umbrella firm.
Oh.
Otherwise, this lady would have,
It was her and her husband, it was just a small firm.
Anyway, I don't want to belabor this now, but it's a continuing issue.
One other staffing issue is I think we all agreed we needed a part-time person to help with public works.
Yeah.
Well, he was going to try to figure out whether he thinks there's enough work to warrant that as well. But yes, we'll take a look at that.
Maybe a combination attorney.
there you go.
Attorney Gopher.
Regional challenges, the only really action item coming out of that was to potentially facilitate a group of stakeholder conversation with CARTA. You can discuss that with Ron starting next week and figure out where they are in the process and whether that makes sense to do so or not on our end.
It's the 12th, and Stephanie gave me some additional
I
context.
had, I thought, I'll give you the other two.
And Mr. Mayor, I think this topic is one of the good pieces it could roll into when you talk about the Kiawah Alliance.
Yep.
One of the spokes, not the hub, but the spoke for Kiawah. This would be perfect.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Health, safety, and security, not much there. We've got to work through some things with the expiring Bear Island Ocean contracts. But the one little minor operational action item, there seemed to be support for from both Kika and at least the chair of our public safety committee and others, was potentially adding light bars to at least some of our town vehicles and overall kind of increasing visibility. And surprisingly, Kika said they thought green, consistent green, cross out, and I think they said the resort was doing the same thing.
I saw the Kika truck, I thought of that this morning, drive by the house.
Yeah.
And it's just some kind of a thing that they prong on there.
Yeah.
So we probably could get exactly.
Well, we
what
can do a full, we can look it up, but a full light bar just like is on the Kika patrol.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I
Yeah.
was thinking that
Yeah.
probably by the exact thing they've got.
Yeah,
Okay.
We used to have one on.
And now, whether, I'm not sure that necessarily all our town departments need it or want it, but we'll kind of discuss that
It would
internally.
look good on your jeans.
I mean, we can all put them on all the vehicles. You may not turn the light on in case departments have to jump vehicles.
It
If
would look
there's an
nice on your
emergency.
Jeep, Brad.
Yeah.
All right, resiliency and protection of the natural environment, beach overlays in progress. We discussed the Sam's Inlet relocation set of issues. We updated everybody on SGAs and the Bobcat Guardian program, so I'm not sure there's much else there.
Excuse me.
Yes.
There is one more thing, and I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up.
We're not going to talk about bobcats again, are we? I'm so tired of talking about bobcats.
We're talking about turtles. So the inaugural program of Kiawah Conversations is tomorrow afternoon. In case you haven't spent enough time in this room for the last 2 days, you are invited at 3 p.m. tomorrow. We're doing a program on turtles, and it's a little on the esoteric side. It's about.
But it's standing room only, right?
But it is, at this point, we have got 132 people who have signed up to attend, so I am thrilled. Any of you are more than welcome to come, because we know we're going to have some no-shows. But this is a real, talk about cross-island initiatives. We've invited people from Seabrook and from Lower Johns Island, and we figure that the watershed approach is a good enough one for the Conservancy. We'll adopt it as well. Thanks to the staff who's helped.
What time is it tomorrow?
3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon.
Infrastructure, Public Works, Public Services, action item was, it's in progress. We're undertaking an engineering assessment, getting preliminary engineering assessment, and that will probably lend itself to one or more multiple task orders with regard to a host of issues regarding, leisure trail connection, some adjustments here on Betsy Carson Parkway. But that's it. But those will involve some, apropos of our conversation as well, if we go forward with the Leisure Trail project, kind of understanding what the cost is and the timing of that. Same thing, whether we don't need, I think we all agree, we don't need to mill and repave Betsy Carson Parkway right now. We could, but we don't need to, but probably within the next handful of years we want to, so we'll factor that into the capital investment plan. Beach Walker, again, not at the earliest, not until I suspect phase 2 of Ocean Pines is done.
I thought too.
And that's
Hate to wait that long, but-
2 or 3 years out. So,
And I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I forgot if you said this. Has the deed from the state for the property been recorded, or have we gotten it, or where does that stand?
no, we received yesterday, it was wet, it was disgusting looking, the actual, just the written confirmation of the conveyance. They have a separate process they've got to go through to get us the actual deed.
It takes about 2 to 3 months, and when they send us the deed, then we take and have it recorded. But they said about 2 or 3 months.
Great, thank you.
You gave us a cell tower update. There are some issues we've got to, and the Infrastructure and Public Works Committee is going to take on some work with regard to franchise agreements. We talked a little bit about the piece that we're going to deal with the SIUC. But
We formed the subcommittee.
and this is another one where had been hoping that the Max firm could help us with franchise agreements, and they've conflicted themselves out of doing any franchise related work. So we've had to hire separate counsel and kind of manage now a separate relationship there, but that work will continue. I think on Kestrel Court, the consensus was kind of leave things as are, continue to monitor, and if we can better enforce, great, but otherwise the convenience outweighs the inconvenience. Beach trash, there didn't seem to be consensus. Conveyed, the Kika heard that, is there a potential trade for Beach Island Services revenues to trade to get town out of the beach trash management business and turn that over to Kika? The consensus seemed to be the status quo is fine. But yeah, if Kika wants to come back with something, certainly we can entertain it. That's yesterday. Anything I missed from yesterday? Stephanie, anything I missed?
Nope. Anything, you guys?
Today, so on the whether or not a comprehensive code update project would be undertaken, We'll await an assessment that includes Luke, Joanne Hennessy, John Taylor, maybe Stephanie, as to, you know, whether we can frame this up in the right way. And at the end of the day, given where we are in the development cycle and the number of developed properties, should we simply focus on, and still may require an outside consultant, but a more limited scope and scale, focused on simply cleaning up and identifying all the problematic issues of the current code, or this complete rewrite using new tools and new techniques. Nothing new on the development agreement annexation, short-term rentals. So Councilmember Berner, Stephanie, I don't know, Lance may be a little bit involved in this, but reach out to the regimes to start assessing whether in fact we want to take under the broader look at short-term rentals.
Correct.
And that's both with regard to issues related to caps or not, as well as some of the ordinance provisions and you know, monitor or you know, better ensuring better consistency with code requirements and whatever those code requirements should be. And then Kiawah next. Kiawah Island Alliance, Stephanie and I will take that one on to get that kick-started, reach out to other stakeholders, suggest a date and a potential agenda for that. And that, and then with regard to a Greenbelt Fund, Councilmember Spencer will work with the county and Low Country Land Trust, Kiawah Island Conservancy, Sea Islands Conservancy, or others to come up with a potential framework for a program. But any decision as to move forward with that and how to fund it, if at all, would follow on this other comprehensive capital investment program analysis. Community Assistance Infrastructure Program, we'll kind of wait to see if the Planning Commission and or regime may want to work forward. I can talk to the chair of the Planning Commission, whether that's something they want to take on, but not a key council priority right now relative to everything else.
Correct.
Okay, that kind of wraps up what we've discussed the last 2 days. Anything else for the good of the order?
I would just say again, like last year, this is an incredibly valuable day and a half we spent doing this and kind of outlaying the priorities and getting kind of a consensus or alignment where we all stand. So I really appreciate you again putting this together. So thank you.
Well, and Stephanie's been part and parcel of that. I appreciate the robustness of the discussion on all of these issues, and I think it's healthy for us and for the community to have an opportunity to have a frank and forthright discussion about the full range of issues, and understand that there are different points of view on many of these things, and sometimes there just aren't easy answers.
I also would say thank you and appreciate the time the staff spent.
Yep.
For them hearing kind of how we think about these issues and the importance and where we place emphasis on certain priorities. So thank you guys for spending this time with us too.
Absolutely. If nothing else, we're actually about 5 minutes late, but we are adjourned. Not too bad today.
Actually, 1 minute by the real clock.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And we're working on getting that.
All right.